Okay, welcome to another episode of the Dogfight Podcast. I'm your host Uriah, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Pavel, hello.
And we were just, man, this weekend has been a really good card.
Yep,
It's
we've been lucky. We've had a couple good cards in a row now. Hoping the momentum rolls into UFC 278 next week, but we've got a lot to cover.
honestly after the snooze fest that was the UFC London card, and the honestly even before that, like the Ortega um Rodriguez fight, like that was good, but then it's just these last several cards have been just kind of boring and
Yeah, we got unlucky certainly with the two main events in a row getting derailed by injury, but then it picked up a little bit again with Pena Nunes, and then we got, and then Santos Hill came along and completely, bested our expectations. And this one, honestly, I came into this one as well a little bit wary. I mean, I said last week it was. I said like two or three times, not that this is a one fight card or anything. Kind of saying this is kind of a one fight card. Um, and no, you know what? I was impressed. So maybe the key is setting my expectations low, like I said last week. But yeah, so I guess let's hop right into it. Dominick Cruz versus Chito Vera. Chito Vera gets Cruz out of there in the fourth round. A really impressive head kick.
it's
Great read.
it's tough seeing arguably one of my favorite fighters, and who's been an absolute pathfinder in the sport, kind of get put to pasture like this. I was talking to one of my friends about this, and I think either I'm at that age because I've been watching for so long, or we're just at that point in time where a lot of the legacy fighters, the guys who for some reason or another have been, sticking around, are their age is showing. It's it's tough, It's I love Dominic Cruz. I not really a big fan of his commentary, but as a fighter and as a almost his philosophy, especially in his recovery after all his injuries, definitely a guy that I look up to. But it's hard seeing a guy get brutally knocked out that way. I mean, that was oof.
It was tough. I mean,
It was
all
rough,
credit to
man. Not
Cheeto.
gonna
That
lie.
was a killer read. Um, and it was disappointing too because it reminded me almost of the Tony Ferguson Michael Chandler fight
That's
where
exactly what I was thinking.
like
As soon as it
yeah.
landed and he fell face first on the mat, that's the first thing I thought was, God, it's another Tony situation.
But here's the thing: in that fight, in the Chandler versus Ferguson fight, Tony looked better than he had in ages. And honestly, my impression of this fight was that Cruz was winning until the head kick, and
Oh,
I thought
Cruz
he looked really
was
good.
definitely winning.
And in fact, I pulled up the scorecards to double check. All three judges had it 2-1 Cruz
Yep.
um, up until the head kick. And so, like, it shows he's not, it puts him in such a weird spot because he has been on the record saying the only reason he fights is to get the title. And this pretty much dashes his chances of getting the title. So, does he
He's
keep fighting? Does he retire? He does still have something left in the tank. But
he's
if the
gonna
title's out of
become
reach, what's the point? You know.
he's gonna become the divisional. It's I don't want to. I hate saying this, and I feel like I'm discrediting him, but he's gonna have to become the divisional gatekeeper.
I just think, does he want to do that, or does he just retire and make money off commentary?
That's obviously only a question that he can answer, that we'll have to find out as time goes on. But I mean,
Exactly,
I credits where credit due. Cheeto made all the right reads.
for sure. And Cheeto put on he had a slow start, but once he started reading him, he figured out the reads, and oh boy, did he make
And
the best.
reading Dominic is hard.
Yeah,
And even though I said last, like, I don't know if I said it on air last week or if I said it in passing, but like, because everyone knows about Dominic's, head movement and his slips and his footwork, so that it's gotten to a point where there's just this archive of footage that we can watch, but that only does so much, obviously, once again, the octagon. And I have no room to talk. I'm obviously not fighting him, but I understand the slow start. Because it reading a fighter is hard. It takes it takes some people longer. Some people can just do it right off the bat. But reading somebody like Dom, that's hard to do. But again, that's why I understand the slow start. A lot of people were like, not really like on Cheeto's case about it, but I don't think they understand how hard it is to do that.
For sure. And I
'Cause
mean, I give a, I mean, we've talked about this off air. You can give a lot of credit to Jason Perella on that, who, we both really think he's quite a good coach. And Cheeto did say that's something that they looked at in camp, if I remember right. I think even in the corner, I think Perella said something about it from what Cheeto said. And credit where it's due, he executed perfectly, and the
it's
emphasis
one of
on
those
execute.
moments. It's one of those moments where like I've watched a lot of Cruz fights, and he does the side sweeping, almost he kind of ducks a bit and then throws like an overhand, or he throws like a body kick, or not body kick, but like a body hit. But
Mhm,
I've always thought in the back of my brain is like, every time he ducks, why don't you just throw a kick or a knee?
and
And
there it
obviously
is.
that's like that's me like armchair cornering. Like what the fuck do I know? There's obviously way more levels to it than I can see. But it was just really fun to see. It's like, oh hey, someone actually did that for once.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, no, I mean, and really, to focus on Cheeto a bit, I am curious where he goes. I mean, he's already ranked number 5, so he's quite high up there, and everybody ahead of him is firmly in title shot territory. That's Jan, Dillashaw, Aldo, Sandhagen in order. Um,
Do you think he takes on? You think he takes on whoever wins Sanhagen? What's the other guy? Song Yadong?
Oh, potentially. See, here's the thing. I've seen it broken down. There's 3 sets of outcomes that are going on that are going to determine who takes on Sterling next after Dillashaw, or Dillashaw if Dillashaw beats Sterling. We'll have time to talk about that later. Um, but it's Jan versus O'Malley, Aldo versus Marab, which is happening next week, if I remember correctly, and Sandhagen versus Yodon. Um, and I think that the most impressive of those 3 wins is going to get that title shot. And so I think that matches Cheeto against one of the two, not losers, but winners who
Runner
lose
ups.
out on that title shot.
Runner ups.
Exactly, yeah. And so
I
that's
don't think I could watch a Cheeto Aldo fight.
oh boy,
That
no,
it would be.
we already had that.
Did we? Did I just
Yeah,
miss that?
Aldo won. Aldo won in dominant fashion. Actually,
Did I just miss that? And I call myself
it
a
was not a fun fight.
and I call myself
Aldo
a mixed martial arts fan.
Aldo wrestled the shit out of him, basically.
Oh, that okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That makes sense then.
Cheeto was a real sore loser about it. It was a whole big thing. He
Oh
elbowed him
no,
after the
I
bell.
vaguely remember the fallout of all that.
Yeah,
Huh.
so it can't be Aldo. But he could fight Sandhagen. That would be a good fight. He could fight Jan. That would be a fun fight. I think Jan runs him over, but or we could get the tasty O'Malley match, which would be fantastic. I would love to see Cheeto beat him again. I don't know if it will happen. I would love for that to happen. So we will see. But I think there's a lot going on there. Bantamweight is really exciting right now. Personally, I think Aldo deserved the title shot over Dillashaw, but we'll see how the Dillashaw Sterling fight goes
Looking
when
at
that does get.
Cheeto's record, I didn't realize that he lost to Song Yadong.
Did he? Oh yeah, he did, and that's the one he was kind of racist afterward.
Oh,
Because
yikes,
he
dog.
didn't think it was a pretty close split decision. I don't that was one of the first fights I ever saw, so I didn't know how to score at the time, so I can't really score it, but I do remember it was close, and I do remember Cheeto was pretty heated after he lost. So I think Vera versus Sandhagen, Vera versus Jan, or Vera versus O'Malley,
O'Malley
all
again.
3 of those would be good fights. And I think all 3 of those are possible. Um, none of those 3 fights are ones that I'm looking at them and thinking that's a slam dunk win. Um, so
Man,
Exciting times
I'm
in
just thinking
bantamweight.
about a Cheeto Sandhagen fight. That
Ooh,
sounds so fun.
that would be such a. That's the first one. That's the one I want most.
That would actually be brutal.
Yes. Um, Cheeto would have to overcome that. I mean, Sandhagen's just so tall for the.
Yeah,
So is O'Malley though, and he beat O'Malley. So
Sandhagen's working with he's working with Ryan Hall and Ton Lee, both guys of the gym that I go to, and absolute killers in the game. So that's yeah, that's a topic for another time. Sandhagen, I could literally do an entire episode about Corey Sandhagen.
and I'm sure we
Dude's a
will. There's
dog.
plenty to talk about. He's a great watch.
But
So yeah,
moving on. But we had a great was it co-main
co-main. Yep.
Nate Landwehr. I feel like I'm mispronouncing that name.
No, you got it, Landwehr.
Landwehr and Onama.
Yep, David Onama. It was, and I did say last week, watch out for Onama to starch Landwehr. Obviously, that didn't happen. Well, it did happen, but it didn't go the way I thought it would. See, because he did starch Landwehr round one. Landwehr was just too angry to die. Um, and he survived and he got starched late in round one. And he survives, proceeds to beat Onama pillar to post round two, and they're both completely out of energy. Three, and they just have a slugfest, and the crowd was losing it. The crowd really added to
I
it.
was standing
Great fight.
up at my desk, at my computer desk, losing my absolute gourd over the because we all watch fights on Discord with some friends. But I was like standing up, I was like pacing back and forth in my room, trying not to get caught off my headset, just absolutely losing my mind because just seeing these two guys just not even I can't even say haymakers because they were so gassed to like
Yeah.
put power behind it, but they're still connecting, and I was that has to be that is a serious contender of fight of the year. I know we're at the midpoint of the year, but
We're past the midpoint.
oh god, yeah, we are. Oh, oof.
Time flies.
That's a terrifying reality. Anywho, I can't think of another fight just off the top of my head. I can't think of another fight that comes close to fight of the year.
I can only think of one, and that's Burns Chimaev.
Yeah, that is a tough fight to go up against.
There's a few others. But that's the one that immediately jumps to mind.
I think as much as a absolute brawl the Gilbert Burns Hamzat fight was, I if I was the person, pulling the cards and doing the voting or whatever, I would actually give Onama Landwehr fight of the year.
Really?
Purely because we expect it from Hamzat and Gilbert, especially going into that fight. We all expected it to be kind of a bloodbath and kind of just a back and forth brawl. I
Right.
don't think we expected this to go the way it did. Like you said last week, like you were fully gutting for Anonymous to get that first round
I thought he
knockout.
would. I thought he wouldn't. I thought he did.
Giving his record, I see why, but like that's the thing. I don't think any of us saw that going the way it did.
No, no. I thought Landwehr was ready to get served. And okay, so I looked up a quick ranking of other fight of the year contenders, and we did forget some. Teixeira Prohaska,
Oh,
that's a great fight.
ooh, that is a great fight. Oh my god.
Moreno Figgy 3 was this year. That was a great fight.
I'll have
And
to
of
rewatch
course,
that one.
just the other week, Schnell versus Sumerdarji,
I
which was
I think the Schnell, I think that's a performance of the night level,
mhm.
but I don't think it's fight of the night or
I
fight of
think
the
that's
year,
fair.
sorry.
Because one of the others that's on
It
here
definitely
is
ranks up there with like a great fucking performance, and I'm glad that he got his performance bonus and everything, and they put
right.
on a show. But I don't think it ranks that high enough to be a contender for fight of the year. But then
That's
again,
fair.
I'm just a average schmo sitting on my computer watching fights because I have nothing else to do in my life.
No. I think you're right. Like it's one of those fights. I think it was too short for it to be really fight of the year.
Yeah, because
It's
it was
kind of
also
like
a
Dover
second round.
McKinney
It was a
versus
second round stoppage, right?
Oliver Gaethje. No, it was late round. Maybe it was second round. Let me check that. I got it
I
right
want
here.
to say it was. I want to say second round or early. No, not early.
Round
Round.
two. Round two.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
Yep. And yeah, so I mean, Arosa Peterson, that was fun, but that was more just because Arosa's a madman. I love him. I'll spotlight him a little later. But
But
he's on 279, not
this
278.
fight, the Nama Limmer fight, since we're talking about the fight of the year, it reminded me of the Cub Swanson fight. Fought the Korean guy.
Oh, Ho Choi.
Ho Choi. It reminded me of that, of just two guys just throwing and just not dying, getting
Yeah,
absolutely starched at one point or another, but not dying and somehow coming back.
yeah,
And I so that like played in my mind when I was watching the fight. I'm like, this has to be fight of the year. Just thinking about the Cup Swanson fight, because I mean, if they got fight of the year, I don't see why not. These guys don't get it.
right. I mean, we got 4 more months, so we do have time. There's one more fight I want to spotlight. I don't think it's fight of the year. It was an amazing fight, but I think on a different sort of level, which was Sarukian versus Gamrot. Which was amazing fight, but I think that was just because both were so high skilled, rather than because it was just so raw. It was so full of raw excitement like this one was.
Right.
So I think this is a strong contender. I think it's definitely going to be up against really Teixeira Prohaska and Burns Jermaine. Are the two it's going to be fighting. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of that. But amazing fight either way. Thrilled to have seen it. Can't wait to see what both of them do. Landwehr had an amazing, funny promo afterward. Like,
Mama didn't raise no
yeah,
bitch, baby.
yep,
He got that Southern grit, which I appreciate as a fellow Southerner and Southern boy like I am. I love that Southern grit that he has. I think that's one of the things that kind of kept him in the fight.
for sure. It was like Schnell. Schnell's a Louisiana guy. Straight up too Southern and angry to die against Sumadarji.
That's
So I
just
think it's just a common thing.
that's just that entire region.
Yep, pretty
Just Southern
much.
grit, don't know when to quit. Let's go.
Yep,
Gotta love it.
basically. Yeah. So then beyond that, we had a couple solid highlights. This isn't going to be as unorthodox as last week's, just because last week every fight was a finish. So we had a lot to talk about on that front. This one, there were a couple that were a little bit that we had some pretty run of the mill fights along with some pretty cool highlights. So I'll just run through those quick.
I'm gonna
One
let
of them,
you pronounce their
yeah.
names because I will absolutely butcher their name.
Oh boy, yeah. Because the first one that came to mind, which we were just saying right before we went on air, probably would have been fight of the night if not for Landwehr Onama, was Yasmin Hauragi versus Yasmin Lucindo. Now, Hauragi, I did say last week, I had heard she was good, but I didn't know anything else about her. I see why people were saying she's good. Uh, for a strawweight to be, in her debut, um, third fight up on the card with as much hype as she was, undefeated,
Yeah, that's
and to
big
put
in
on a show
itself.
like that, that's a huge vote of confidence by the higher ups. And now I see why. Because she walked in and she's suddenly one of the better prospects at strawweight. And now, the women's divisions aren't always super deep. In fact, I thought she was a flyweight. And so I was like, okay, yeah, she just walked to the front of the line. Almost. Manon Fiorot is still quite good. I can't wait to see her challenge Valentina. But no, she's a strawweight though, and really, strawweight's the deepest of the women's divisions. And she still distinguished herself as a contender, and that's not to take away from Yasmin Lucindo, who's 20 years old, which really just is crazy to think about, and already has. She started fighting when she was 14. Um, and the two of them go to a knock him down, drag him out, three round decision. That was closer than the scorecards really showed. A lot of credit to Lucindo. I knew nothing about her at all coming in.
I knew nothing
Um,
about both of these fighters, not gonna
yeah,
lie.
yeah. I knew very little about Haudagi except for her reputation.
Was
But no, but yeah,
Lucinda's the one that was, like, fighting, like, she's what, 22?
20.
20, yeah, that's and was, like, fighting at the age of 14, like, had her first fight
Yep,
at 14,
14.
something like that?
Yep. They
That
were saying on
is
the broadcast
ridiculous.
she learned to fight MMA because I think there was some violence going on around her family, so she learned it to protect her family, which is a really nice story.
That is
That
ridiculous to pick up I imagine, 'cause I think her first fight was at 14, but obviously she was probably
Yeah,
training before then.
exactly.
So say just a broad guess, like started when she was like 12.
Right.
That's
Like a
insane.
year. That's a year of training minimum.
Yeah, and then just jump up to professional. Like I know like kids do taekwondo or whatever at like 7, but to
Yeah.
be on a mixed martial arts circuit at 14, even if it's a regional scene, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I didn't have my first like jujitsu bout until literally earlier this year, and I've been training for like 2 or 3 years now. I am a late starter, but I can't imagine doing that at that age.
Yeah, so major props to Lucindo. She fought her heart out, and it wasn't one of those things where I'm complimenting a fighter just because they were tough and got their ass
She
beat.
showed that she
She was
deserves to be
competitive.
there.
Exactly. She showed she's UFC level against somebody who I think is going to be a really good prospect at that
Mhm.
weight class. Um, so I'm really excited to see where both go from here. I think Hauragi is more likely to advance than Lucindo does, but I think Lucindo is going to be somebody like Estela Nunez. I think she's a bantamweight though, who is I think her name is Estela Nunez, who's lower level but very fun to watch. And really, I think there's a lot of in the women's division. There's a dearth of fighters who I see on the card. I see them on the card, and I think, oh, I'm going to tune in because she's exciting. Um, and it's really usually just the prospects. And so having even if she's a little lower level, having somebody who's exciting like that, who I'm going to tune in and watch, um, is good. And they really need that. Like instead of having a lot of boring names like the Jessica Eyes, Kate Kagians, the Hannah Cyphers of the world,
Right.
um, the Courtney Caseys of the world, like none of those names are really gonna get me excited. Or Cynthia Calvillo, who we'll mention in a little bit. Um, you know, so good on her. She really showed she belongs. I'm excited to see where both go, especially Hauragi. And I thought they were a lock for fight of the night until, of course, the next. So
Literally gets derailed by the Nate train.
exactly. And then aside from that, we had a couple really nice KOs. I mean, there was Gabriel Benitez had a KO over Charlie Ontiveros. Ontiveros is super fun to
Before you
watch.
go any further, I just
Yes.
wanna I just wanna do a disclaimer that I actually didn't watch a lot of the prelim or the early card fights. I was too busy, fighting traffic on the way back from airsofting, so I'm gonna let Pavel take the reign on this one because he saw more of the fights than I did. I was too busy cursing at my steering wheel to,
No
watch
worries, no
them.
worries. Hey, this is my specialty. This is what I do.
You're like, "Oh, my time has come."
I like to look. I sniff at all the random prelim fights, and sometimes there are bangers there. And you know what? There were this time too. We had Gabriel Benitez versus Charlie Ontiveros. Ontiveros, you may remember, is the guy who got a neck injury on short notice against Kevin Holland a while back, who has ramen-looking hair, or had ramen-looking hair back then. He's an exciting striker. There's just one problem: he has no defense, and the moment you get into the ground, he dies. Which is a shame. He's definitely going to get cut. He's not really UFC level, but I did want to, put a word out there for him because I think you know, um, he's a fun fighter, and he spoke up about how tough it was to come back from that debut against Holland, and about the mental side of things. So I really want to applaud him for that. Um, Bisping was actually kind of trashing him for it a little bit, which I wasn't quite a fan of. But he was saying not everyone's cut out for the octagon. I think one of the other commentators stuck up for him. But he looked really good until he got taken down. But Benitez is quite good. He did need a win, to be fair. But he's always been like kind of one of those lower tier lightweights. Like not lower tier, like maybe like if we extended the rankings to 20 or 25, he would be around there
Okay,
always.
yeah, yeah.
And he would, and he's always been an exciting watch. I always spotlight him if I can. Um, Dude kicks like a mother. And yeah, no, he had a really good finish against Charlie Ontiveros. Tyson Nam, who I called out last week, um, had a great knockout against Ode Osborne. I thought
That's
it would be more competitive.
that is one of the guys that I went back and watched his knockout because I think you told me I need to watch it,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I still am baffled why who was his opponent?
Ode
Um,
Osborne.
I'm still baffled why Osborne decided to throw a flying knee. Um,
See that, like he's landed that the kind of thing in the past, and but
I
Nam
think
had that weight on him.
there's a temporary lapse of fighter IQ that happened,
Yes.
and he paid for it dearly because it was a nasty knockout.
Nam was saying in the post fight interview, and he was smiling the entire fight back as he had torn his ACL. This is his first fight back, and so he was just happy to be in there. But he noticeably grinned the second time he did the knee because
Oh
he knew he had him
no!
just hanging there. And
Oh no! That's the one thing as a fighter that you don't ever want to see, and I've I've encountered this while just doing like open mats. Is when you're like either you're grappling with somebody or you're striking with somebody, and they just kind of give you a shit-eating grin. But a lot of times you can just kind of like pass it off as this, someone being cocky or whatever, until you get like taken down or submitted. It's like,
that's
oh,
why you were
he he
smiling.
he found the hole in my game. I get it now.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, and that's what happened here. I mean, he had him red on the first one, and he nailed him on the second one. And
Oh, that
Nam's
reminds
cool. Like he's a real one. He's 38. He's been around forever. He's been fighting since 2006. Um, and so props to him coming back and making a good showing of it. Um, so wanted to spotlight him, and I wanted to spotlight Josh Quinlan, who came out and absolutely gadooshed Jason Witt. Um,
I saw a little bit of that highlight just in passing. Um
mhm.
I've never seen a big man like that drop.
Yeah, no, he was
I
gone,
he
gone.
was that was rough.
Yeah. I think Witt might get cut, which is a shame. Quint, did you know Jason Witt has a win over Brian Barberena?
There's a lot recently, and I'm gonna tangent a little bit. Recently, I've been noticing that there's a lot of fights that I just didn't know about, or have just been kind of like they were like either super early in someone's career that didn't really make moves or didn't really, you know, raise an eyebrow. Like recently, I learned today that it was Mike Perry submitted somebody. I forget who it was. It's gonna bother me now.
Oh, I'm gonna look that up now. That sounds wild.
He submitted somebody way back in a amateur UFC or not UFC fight, amateur MMA fight, and I'm like, it is the most random thing ever. I,
Yeah, that Mike Perry landing a submission is a strange thought to me. Not gonna lie.
this sport is
Um,
made up.
let's
Oh
see.
no, it was Mike Perry submitted Nate Landwehr. That's what it was.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
That's
submitted Nate
crazy.
Landwehr in 2010. I'm like, all right, that's not what I expected, but
Did
it's
he
it's like,
really?
yeah, I'm literally watching the footage right now.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
But it's like you were saying with
That's ages. That's ancient.
Like Barbarana, it's like it's these fights that are like back in the day or like earlier in someone's career that I just don't
That's
know
so
about, and
old.
then
It's not even on his sure dog. That's unbelievable.
it adds like a level of mystique and kind of lends credence to somebody's career. It's like, man, if even if it was early in someone else's career, you managed to get a win over them. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
Right. It's like it's his name Mung something or other, who's the one in Zhang Wei Li's record. She's basically made a career out of that in one championship. Not that
Uh,
she's terrible, but like she beat Zhang pretty early on. You know,
just another fight fact that a lot of people may know. I don't know if you know. Did you know BJ Penn and Lyoto Machida fought
no,
at like
what,
205?
what?
Yeah,
BJ Penn went up to 205.
I want to say it was like a Japanese promotion.
It makes sense
Um,
now.
say no more, fam.
Say no more.
Yeah, it was a really puffed up looking Machida, which is really weird, but it's fights like that are hilarious.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, no. So
It was a K1
yeah.
fight
Okay, then say no more.
because
That I believe
there's
it.
not a light heavyweight and a heavyweight division in K1 if I remember correctly.
Yep,
So
pro
yeah,
wrestling style.
a very small BJ Penn versus a very puffed up looking Cheetah.
Yeah, that reminds me. I heard of a fight between Anthony Rumble Johnson and Charlie Brenneman at welterweight.
What?
Anthony Johnson was obviously coming down from light heavyweight. Charlie Brenneman was coming
What?
up from lightweight. And so everything I haven't seen the fight, but I've heard it was just an execution because that is a 4 weight class difference. Um, and yeah, that probably went about as well for Brenneman as you would expect. So
This sport is made up, and you can't convince me
it's
otherwise.
exactly. And then finally, the last person I want to spotlight for a job well done is Angela Hill. Won a close fight. Good for her. She finally did it. The cards finally went her way, and
Well,
it was deserved. It was deserved because I really thought Godinez was going to wrestle her more, but
yeah, because
she
that's
got
kind
gun
of her
shy.
bread and butter.
Yeah, no, she got gun shy. Hill put her in a guillotine the one time she shot,
Ooh,
and she really overreacted to it. It wasn't a good guillotine, but she was visibly spooked in the corner about it,
yeah,
and
but
she went off
it's
the
really
wrestling after that.
awkward when a historically strike heavy fighter somehow throws a submission on you. Like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just because it's
It's
something
so unexpected.
you don't factor that in your game plan because it's like, oh, they're gonna strike. All right, cool, whatever. And then suddenly you're in a guillotine. Like
Right.
that throws your entire game plan out the window because now you're thinking, oh, this is something that I have to deal with now that I have to like account for.
Exactly. And so like that really that took the shine off Godinez a little bit. I still think her wrestling's quite good. I think she just needs a fight IQ adjustment. Um, so then to go from that to lowlights, there was one really bad robbery on this card. Martin Budai over Lukasz Brzezski. Oh boy, that name's tough. But um, there was a Polish player who played for the soccer team I support at one point who had the same RZ combo in his name, so I learned how to pronounce it just based on that. Hopefully, I'm not butchering it, even despite that. Anyways, Martin Budai was out. Look, I like the guy. I think he's a good story. Um, like he used to weigh 375 pounds and play video games 20 hours a day, and he turned his life around.
Oh,
Good for
so it's
him.
the kind of like the Khalil Roundtree that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like that.
Okay, I respect
And
that.
yeah, so no, I have a lot of respect for the guy, but he did not win this fight. He was outstruck 2-1, and there was not a huge difference in like the lands, the power of those punches landed. For every punch he threw, Brzezski pretty much landed like four. And I think it's a travesty. Not that it was an amazing fight, but I can't believe Budai walked away with that as much as I like the guy. So that was unfortunate. That was the only referee, that was the only judging blind spot, I think, on this card, which is pretty good. I think that seminar that they held a few weeks back has really helped. We've had fewer insane robberies since then. So fingers crossed that continues. And then we had a couple prospects that I spotlighted last week that kind of disappointed. Godin, as I covered. Bruno Silva was kind of tentative all fight. He looked a little nervous, and GM Gerald Mearshard ended up beating him by submission by high elbow guillotine.
That's pretty big for
Um,
Mearshot though.
yeah, no, that's
That's
his
pretty
bread
big
and
for
butter.
him. Yeah.
He's the I think in the entire division, the entire company really. He's the club and sub guy. He's the guy who will wear you out with ground and pound, or hit you with a punch, drop you, hit you with some ground and pound, and then slap a sub on. He even said in the interview afterward, Silva's too tough to knock out, so I had to submit him. I had to take that neck. So props to Mearshart. That's a big win. In the Twitch chat full of brain dead casuals, everybody was saying, "Ah, yes, Kamzat's son got a win here." Hopefully, this will distance him from that.
Going back to what you said about the reffing, there was one thing I didn't really like about one of the fights. I think it was the I cannot pronounce his name, Verzkanov.
Azamat Mirzakhanov. Yes.
Yeah, Frank Trigg literally just saw him take like 80 shots unanswered.
Well, that was he won. It was but it was Clark
Or Clark. Yeah,
that
it was
took the
Clark, that's what it
shots. Yeah,
was.
Devin
Yeah.
Clark. Yeah, you're right. That was a really late stoppage.
That was a
Frank Trigg should
very
have
late
stepped
stoppage in
in.
my opinion, and
Yeah,
that's that's something that, and I get Frank Trigg is Frank Trigg's a fighter's fighter, like, he he's obviously, like, a legend in the sport, but there comes a certain point where you have to ref like a fighter, but you also have to remember that they still have careers and, like, you have to worry about the longevity of them. So even
right. You got to protect the fighter.
I have a feeling it was one of those, "Well, I would have gotten out of this if I was him," and kind of, like, armchair, like, cornering while watching him,
Yeah.
but,
And
like,
if
you
you're
gotta
if you're if you're taking the time to armchair corner while deciding whether to stop a fight, you're
you
already
shouldn't.
stopping it too late. It should have
Yeah,
been stopped. So yeah.
and,
So bit of a rough
seeing
showing
him
there.
take all those shots is, like, I worry about someone's longevity in the sport,
Yeah.
especially, like, in this day and age where the the rise in CTE and whatnot is ever so
Exactly.
prevalent, but
Right.
yeah. That's
That's why I'm
small
to
hiccups that I saw from a ref, but that's again, I didn't watch the rest of the fights, unfortunately, or the other
no, you're
fights.
right. You're right. But yeah, like that's why I was so impressed with Josh Quinlan after that Wit knockout. He stopped himself mid dive for a hammer
Yeah,
fist.
he kinda, like, rolled over on him, like, rolled over around him, I guess, to,
Yeah.
like, actively stop himself from dropping a hammer fist.
Right. Which was really, I mean, that's super classy. That's the kind of thing you like to see.
That's
Um,
that's the kind of move when, Machida
yeah, that's
not
Machida's thing. Yeah, exactly.
Machida knocked out, Munoz.
He did it a few
Ah,
times actually.
Mark Munoz, and because they're, like, best friends, you could see him just wind up and then just stop, and it's, like, one of those, like, nobility and fighting type things and
Right.
having respect and just, again, remembering that this is a sport and these guys have careers,
They have
and
lives,
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's not worth it. They're already out of the fight. No need to do more damage. So
Exactly.
props to Quinlan there. Not props to Frank Trigg. So yeah. And then final low light I was going to cover was the Calvillo versus Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunez fight, which good on Nina Nunez. She retires on top. Um, but Calvillo looked awful. And for somebody who's ranked and who was once a prospect in this division, now we're talking about her maybe looking at getting cut. So really a fall from grace for her. She looked good coming up to flyweight. She'd been doing okay in strawweight. She just couldn't make the weight. And strawweight's a tough division,
Oh, yeah.
and she's one of the better wrestlers in the women's divisions too. So really a disappointing day for women's MMA wrestling. So we'll see what happens from here. I think she could get cut, but I was expecting better from her. But not to take away from Nina Nunez, she fought a good fight,
Nina
if
Nunez
not an
retired.
exciting fight. Yeah, she retired, and
I think she retired,
she's
like,
up on top.
earlier, like, as of, like, right now, I think she retired, like,
Yeah, she
earlier
retired right after the
today.
fight.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
after the fight? Okay.
yeah, she left her gloves in the center of the ring and everything. So that was it.
Man, I miss everything when I'm not watching fights.
I mean, you're not. I mean, yeah, like we covered everything that pretty much happened. So that brings up the big topic that I found from this fight, which was since this fight night was in San Diego, you get a slew of super interesting information that doesn't get disclosed anywhere else because not enough commissions do this kind of thing. And by that, I mean we were able to see not only fighters' fight night weights, to see what they rehydrated to weight wise after their weight cut was over. We also got to see what every fighter on the card made. And that is such a rare thing these days because the UFC kind of bought out the Nevada State Athletic Commission to not have to do that anymore.
Yeah, they try to keep it
Um,
hush hush.
exactly. They're trying to conceal how little they're paying their fighters. And going through the figures for this fight night, it was really staggering how little money the fighters made on this card. Like at least last time this happened, we had Francis Ngannou on it. He made 600K, which was still, an underpay for sure.
Especially for a
For him,
champion.
for the heavyweight champion, the baddest man on the planet, so they like to call him. You know, um, this time the highest payout on the entire card was half of that, which was Chito Vera. He made 300K plus the 50K for performance of the night. Um, and only 5 fighters, 6 including with performance bonuses, made over 6 figures. Um, and we ended up with, and the lowest payout was just $10,000 to take all those punches. It was Lukasz Brzeski, who took a lot of bombs from Budai. Um, and just a lot of fighters just made criminally low amounts.
I'm
Azamat
reading
Murzakanov
through
only made 24K. Like, yeah,
I'm reading through the payouts right now. I just want to highlight something that we talked about a little bit about this off air. I was like, we should just talk about this on air. Um, Gerald Mearshart, I can never pronounce his
Mearshart,
name. He
Mearshart.
he made 146. Obviously, that's 73 to show, 73 to win. That is that is insane. Like over 40. It's I don't I will never understand fighter pay. I'll never understand. Like obviously, I'm not a businessman. I'm obviously not sitting in the rooms while they're negotiating this, but I don't know. 73 to show, 73 to win. That doesn't seem right to me for someone
I
of
mean, especially
his.
yeah, he's been around. He's been in the game a long time. The one that really didn't seem right, which really blew my mind, was Dominick Cruz, main eventer, multiple time champion, probably the greatest bantamweight in UFC history. For lack of who else would be. We can have a discussion about another day, but he's a very popular pick for that. He made $175,000. Angela Hill made $190,000. That is insane to me. And look, credit where it's due to Angela for finally winning a close fight. I like her. I think she puts on fun fights when given the chance. Um, but for her to be winning to make more money than a former double champ and possible divisional greatest of all time, that shows that something is a little bit wrong here, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
To be clear, I'm happy for Angela, and I think that she's making the money that she deserves. But I don't think Dom is making the money that he deserves, especially for the amount he has given the sport, the amount of damage he's incurred in the course of performing at the level he has in this sport. 175K seems incredibly. So I can't get behind that. And that's not to say about some of the other really courageous performances on this card that really made almost nothing. Like Yasmin Lucindo, she put on a great fight. She got $12,000 for it, and for what would have been a fight of the night on any normal card.
This isn't even post tax either,
No,
which is boggling my mind.
not post tax, not post fees given to managers, camps. So a lot of these fighters come away with like half of this money.
Easily.
No, half
Probably
is just
less.
taxes, less actually, especially because it's in California. They take a larger portion than normal, I think. And so you scroll down and like you look at the base pay for some of these. Like so Tyson Nam made 50,000, 25 to show, 25 to win. He's been around forever. Like
Another one that stood out to me was the Azamat Clark fight.
yeah,
Azamat made 24 grand. That's 12 to show, 12 to win. Devin made 75 to lose.
yeah.
Like something again, there's probably bigger things at play here. And like I said before, I don't consider myself a businessman or a manager. I'm not in these rooms when negotiating contracts and pay or whatnot, or even if they can negotiate pay. But being paid more to lose against your opponent seems really weird to me.
Right. I mean, Clark, I think, I think he probably got a pay step up for saving that one card with Anthony Smith way back in the day. And, I'm happy for fighters to make more. I'm always
No,
in the camp,
I
even if
am too.
like,
Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but as certain like This is like the scumbaggy attitude that could come out is just like if you know you're probably gonna get paid more than the other guy, even if you don't know that, if you're fighting somebody who is lower ranked than you and you already know that you're gonna get paid 75, logically speaking, you know the guy you're fighting is probably gonna get paid less than you.
Mhm.
Do you try? Obviously, you're gonna try because you're on that stage for a reason. But like, what's stopping somebody from just like kind of coasting?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean,
And then
yeah.
that becomes a morals and ethics thing. It's obviously going to be different for every person. And I would like to believe that every fighter is going out there and giving it their hardest. I want to believe that, but there's always an exception to the rule somewhere, somewhere, somehow. I just know that there's somebody out there who, if given that same situation, to be like, well, shit, I ain't got to do anything. I'm still getting paid 75. Like,
I think of Alistair Overeem in his later fights. He had a really cushy deal. He was making I think he was making 400 to 500 grand a fight flat,
show?
flat to show.
Wow.
And so I mean in his last few fights it did seem like he phoned it in a few times because he was making the same money no matter what. Demetrius Johnson 300K flat for every win if I remember right.
Well, there's a
Uh,
reason why DJ left.
I know, right, but
That's the
true.
reason why he left.
Yeah, but you know, if you've locked in a pretty high minimum, I hadn't considered that. You know, maybe you just don't try. Granted, I think these guys are prouder than that, but I think that is something that
Oh,
could happen, especially in a
for
case
sure.
like with
And
Overeem.
I don't want to believe that somebody is going to act and think like that, but you never know, especially when money's on the line. It's like,
Exactly.
why try when you can just kind of coast a bit and still get paid, still get paid bucks. It's like, uh,
Right.
uh,
Yeah. And then the other thing as well with fighter pay is, you know, we talked about the bonuses being the performance bonuses given out. Obviously, Onama and Landwehr got their 50K each, and Chito Vera and Tyson Nam were the others who got 50K. But I want to talk about the bonuses because one, there were definitely more performances worthy of bonuses tonight, not tonight, on the card than were given on the card. Like, for example, there was the Howdigi versus Lucindo fight, which a lot of people thought deserved a bonus. Josh Quinlan had a great knockout. Gabriel Benitez had a great knockout. Even Priscilla Cachoeira had a great knockout, even though I don't like her. You know, you could make arguments for each of those to receive a 50K bonus. And look, 50K is not much to the UFC. They rake it in. This was the highest grossing event in arena history at Pachanga Arena in San Diego.
dude, they make a fraction off of that merchandising alone.
Exactly. They make millions on that. And like meanwhile, you look at performance bonuses. Not only are they just a measly 50,000, they have been the same amount since 2014. And actually, in fact, prior to that, they were higher. Um, they were higher before they were set at 50K. Granted, they varied card to card before 2014, but you know, a lot of the time they were higher. And so now with inflation and
Yeah.
with fighter pay, ostensibly going up a little bit, for them to still be 50K after all that and to still be limited to just 4 a night at most, or at least, usually at most. Sometimes he'll hand out a couple extra, Dana will. You know, there's I think it's not unreasonable to say that they should hand out more bonuses.
I'm hoping, and this is me being the idealist and the optimist here. I'm hoping there's some backroom bonuses being thrown out that just isn't getting that aren't getting reported. I'm hoping because to like the Lucinda fight and I cannot pronounce
Mhm.
her name.
Howdigi.
Howdigi? You said they didn't get a bonus, right?
No, no bonus. And
I don't see how, even if it is your debut and you put on an absolute brawl like they did and an absolute show like they did, you don't get a bonus. I don't see how that's possible.
right.
I
I mean,
really
yeah.
hope that they did get backroom bonus. Again, this is me. I it doesn't make sense, and it's one of the things that makes me really irritated about the UFC um, is just the lack of pay and the lack of recognition that these fighters get for putting on an absolute show like that.
Exactly. Like they did everything they did everything they were supposed to and more. Like you would think that they would hand out something for them, but apparently, and they did not like a close look at it, but they like anecdotally checked in on whether people were actually getting backroom bonuses, and it turns out, like at least if I remember right, backroom bonuses are exceedingly rare.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I really don't think. I think these, they put their heart and soul. People who are up for bonus consideration have done the best they possibly could um, to distinguish themselves. And sometimes you have a card like Santos versus Hill, where you have 10 for 10 finishes, and everybody's making a stake and a claim to get a bonus, and they still only gave out 4 bonuses on a card like that, which is disappointing. And so, the reason we bring up fighter pay is because Dana White, in addition to it being California, Dana White also made some remarks about fighter pay the other day, um, talking about how fighters want to get paid more, and he said, um, in terms of about raises, that it's never going to
Yeah.
happen while I'm here. Believe me, these guys get paid what they're supposed to get paid. They eat what they kill. They get a percentage of the pay per view buys, and the money is spread out amongst all the fighters. That is his quote on the matter. And there's no end in sight on this unless we get a fighters union, which is a whole different thing for a whole different episode. But it's frustrating. It is also one of my big gripes with UFC
It's
that they
disheartening.
won't. Yeah, the revenue sharing is about 20%. I think it's actually 18% of
God.
the revenue goes to fighters, which is, and I can't mince words with this. It's a joke, considering every other major sports league hovers around 50-50 players
Well,
and
yeah,
owners.
for sure.
And even baseball is 60-40 in favor of the players. Um,
They also have a
and
hardcore players union, though.
they do. Yeah, I mean that's why. They secure money for the players, and that's what a strong union can do. Um, but UFC fighters won't unionize, and there have been attempts, of course, in the past. We'll talk about this more on some other episode, I think, because it's just a big topic. But I think there's too much infighting, no pun intended, um, between them to um, really agree on starting a union, because there's always the worry that they're just going to get fired and replaced for even trying, which
I
has
mean,
happened
it's
before.
the lack of pay and the gaps between. I mean, that's like one of the reason why a lot of these fighters are moving on to other promotions. I mean, like I said earlier, like Demetrius Johnson, he wasn't happy with the pay. He also wasn't happy with kind of the current landscape of the division. He also got dethroned by Cejudo, but that's beside the point. But
Hmm.
he's making pretty big cash in one, if I remember correctly.
Yep, he's getting paid over there. Shane Burgos, actually, usual top 15 featherweight, always puts on a great fight. He had a great fight against Charles Jourdain
Not
um,
even like a month
the other
ago.
week. Yeah, and he came out today saying that he's jumped to the Professional Fighting League, PFL, because UFC would not match
Which
his
is
contract deal.
ironic because Dana, I think in a post-fight interview during the fight after the Jordan fight, he said something along the lines of like he really wanted to resign or extend his contract and he'd pay him or whatever. I'm like, man, you lowballed the hell out of him then.
Yeah, it's just like
If that's what's happening
it's
in the
he's talking
negotiation
out of
rooms,
both
you're
sides.
lowballing so badly.
Exactly. Like, and that's what they do, and it's frustrating. And now we're losing a fun fighter like Burgos to PFL, where you know what? Honestly, good for him. I think if he can stay healthy, huge if given the way he fights, he will be a contender for the $1 million prize next season. He's there for 2 seasons. So
Refresh my memory. I don't watch the PFL that much. I'm not really that familiar.
Right.
there is like I know it's like a tournament style, and
Mhm.
there is like a cash pot at the end, but like, do they get paid per fight?
Um, I think they get paid per season, if I'm right, because each season's maximum actually, it might be per fight, but it's maximum 5 fights a season. I think I heard it's a maximum of 11 fights on his deal because I think there's one non-season fight that he'll have probably. Or I heard something along those lines.
They signed the contract, and the contract they state that in this season you're going to get paid X amount, but if you win, you're also going to get the cash pot at the end.
I believe so. I'm not
That's a decent
as
business
familiar about
model.
PFL, but apparently they do pay well for a lot of the ex UFC talent that they attract, such as Anthony Pettis, Stevie Ray, Antonio Carlos Jr., who won the million when he went over there. Um,
That's a good business
recently,
model.
yeah, I mean, it's a really promising form, and they have a lot. I think they can. It's got potential. Just right now, the level is not there, and they've had some issues with
I
pacing.
don't think the level will ever be there because I mean
True.
I could be wrong on that one, but
It could get up to a Bellator level, which I think would make it at least viable.
okay, that's fair.
Um,
It's the problem with like the UFC in terms of like, I think I said on on the other podcast or and passing is that the UFC is just it's so loaded with stars and that it's just it's hard to compete against that.
yeah,
It's it's like being a mom and pop shop when the Walmart opens up right next to you. It's like obviously most if not all your business is gonna go to Walmart because they have everything. They have everything you need and whatnot. So
right. And so it's tough, like I think they can compete potentially, not like on the same level. I think maybe again on the Bellator tier, I think they can probably push Bellator for number two promotion. Um, it's just that their format does have some issues with it. They do have a tournament format, and so that means if a fighter can't stay healthy, they won't be able to win the million because they just won't be able to fight.
right.
That's what happened with uh who was it? I don't remember who it was. One of their guys who I think won one of the recent fights was injured, and in a case like that, I think the loser goes on actually to fight in the next round, something like
Interesting.
that. I'm kind of talking at my butt on that. I don't remember how it goes, but if you're injured in a tournament format like that, you can't go on. You know, so that's why I worry about Burgos because he takes a lot of damage. Um, with the way he fights.
He
Uh,
really
his
does take
de-
a lot of
his
damage.
his defense is my chin's really good. I can really take a hit. That's not a
I'm
great
good at
defense
blocking
though.
punches with my face.
Exactly. To be fair, he's still a good fighter. Not to hate on the dude. He's
Oh
my
no,
boy.
he's definitely got skill.
He's a New York boy. I love him. But we'll see. I think he has a real. He's definitely one of the better featherweights in that division. So we'll see how he does. But yeah. So that's fighter pay. I'm sure we'll have more to say on it later. Um, but we've already gone on about it for a while. So yeah, I guess I guess the one other small thing that came out of this week's card is that early on there was some discussion about the contender series, specifically about Bo Nickel. And Bo Nickel came on to if I remember correctly, he was a big wrestling prospect.
He's like he was a wrecking ball in D1 wrestling, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and so
He had a shot at the Olympic trials. Um, I'm not gonna say he failed the Olympic trials. He just couldn't keep up with that level, which is fair.
mhm,
The Olympic wrestling is a very high level, cream of the crop stable. If you can't
right,
cut it there, no one's gonna be mad.
exactly.
That's nothing to be mad about or sad about. So
Agreed.
he's a good fighter or good wrestler, I should say.
And so he came on to contender series. He I think he won his fight in pretty dominant fashion. I don't remember if it was by knockout or by submission, but he put the guy out basically. And the hype was so big on him after they didn't award him a contract just because hasn't had that many MMA fights. But the hype was so high with him that Dana White arranged him another fight on later in the season for Contender Series in a month, and against a former, I think it's the current or former Cage Fury Fighting Championships champion in middleweight. And so that's a real fight. And he said, and Dana basically all but said, if he wins this fight, he gets a contract. And now the commentators were talking about that on the broadcast, and Michael Bisping was talking about it, and DC just Cormier could not wait to get a word on him. And when he did, Cormier basically said, and I almost verbatim, put him against a top 15 opponent right now and he'll win.
DC will always gas up a wrestler, though.
Exactly, but is he that good? I guess that's our discussion here.
I need to go back and watch that. I need to try and find some more footage on Bo Nickel. Admittedly, I didn't watch the Contender fight. I think we talked about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see more. And just to kind of gauge where I personally think he should be. Then again, my opinion doesn't really matter in the long run, but
no, but I mean, I'm with you.
From what I've seen, though, I mean, from what I've seen and heard, obviously it could be hype and whatnot. He's looking like a stud.
Yeah, it's rare that we hear a prospect of this caliber get gassed up from Contender Series. Usually, a prospect of this caliber just gets signed direct as a free agent. Look at Manel Kape, look at Yuri Prohaska, look at even Yasmin Haragi. Like the top prospects usually get to skip Contender Series.
My one fear is he becomes a Sage Northcutt.
Ooh, boy,
that is my one fear. Is that even though they're kind of playing a little bit of a long game with him, is that they're gonna if he does get this contract or whatever, is that they're gonna market the crap out of him and turn him into a Sage Northcutt, and then he fails miserably.
True. Yeah, that would be bad.
Miserably, but completely underperforms, and then gets cut or whatever, and then goes to another promotion and then gets absolutely starched.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, like, hopefully nobody follows the Sage Northcutt model of getting your face broken the moment you leave the promotion by somebody you shouldn't have been in the cage with anyway. But like
that guy, Cosmo
Alexandre, dude is terrifying.
That was a legitimately scary knockout.
Yeah,
and it kind of made me question why I watched this sport in the first place.
Northcutt should not have been in the cage with him.
He's
one of the few fighters I've seen fight at one, and dude can strike.
He's good.
Northcutt was not ready for that.
He's not Cosmo Alexandre level good.
Right. And so with Bo Nickel, I see a couple different paths happening. Like on the one, like if they rush him like that, that could happen. But honestly, like with a prospect of his seeming ability, it's very rare. Like it's very hard to give them the slow rise to the top, because you look at other prospects who came in with this much hype, who they tried to give a slow route up. Look at Khamzat Chimaev. Look at who was I just about to say? Alex Pereira. They tried to give him the slow rise, and he's already fighting for the title in November. Khamzat, he's already fighting Nate Diaz. And he already fought Gilbert Burns. Like, with a prospect with this much hype, if they deliver even somewhat, it's very hard to justify slowing them down on their rise. So I could see that happening with Bo Nickel. The one thing is, I don't know how his striking is. I'd like to see that before I'm really sold on
him. Yeah.
Because you can be a great wrestler, but if you can't strike, you're in trouble. Not to bully your boy Ryan Hall or anything.
Oh.
But yeah, he's very good at what he does. But you do have to be somewhat well rounded in the end. Andre Fialho, one of our podcast favorites, he just signed a new contract.
They not marketed, but they hyped him up so much, which is fair. I mean, he has the skill to back it up, but he did get pieced up pretty good.
I mean, he has the skill, singular emphasis on the one skill that he does have. Because oh boy, can he box! But I do feel like they're rushing him because he's not well rounded enough. He can't wrestle. He doesn't have wrestling. Even Charlie Ontiveros, who I mentioned earlier, really fun striker. What other striker throws like multiple axe kicks in a fight in like the span of a few minutes? Nobody does that. Um, but the dude he can't grapple. He can't. He has no wrestling defense, so he's just not. He ended up not being UFC level, and so I do worry about that for Bo Nickel. So I will try and tune in for that Contender Series fight because I want to see what he's capable of.
Yeah,
But maybe
I'll
he is
definitely
that
have
good.
to try and watch that.
Yeah, maybe he is that good. We'll see. So that's the Bo Nickel situation.
I
How are we
was
doing on time?
we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good.
Okay, cool.
I was cruising through the our production notes, and this is one that you put up. I let you take the reins on this production notes. So how do you think MMA would work in a furry universe?
Right. See, this is one of those things I think about a lot because I am, I'm hosting this podcast. Clearly, I'm furry trash.
What
Like,
you are? Oh no.
oops, did I
Uh-oh.
say that aloud? No, but like this is the kind of thing that just brings me endless interest. Like thinking about how something that we kind of take as somewhat mundane or just for granted, and thinking how would this change in response to being in a universe of anthros. And I think there's so much that changes from technique. Like think of the different submissions you'd have to do. Like imagine trying to do a heel hook on someone with paws, right? It doesn't work.
Imagine trying to do a
Uh,
heel hook on somebody with hooves. There's no
exactly,
heel.
exactly. It doesn't work. Imagine the striking profile becomes so different. Like hooks become a huge concern now to anything with a large muzzle. That's so that the technique of that becomes totally
I
different.
will say, it- putting someone say like yeah say like you're grappling someone's character or whatever.
Mhm.
Getting a rear naked choke on somebody with a muzzle would be super fucking easy because there's so much chin.
True, that is true.
It
So
becomes effortless at that point.
those would arguably become even more popular then.
It's just everyone's
So
throwing RNCs. It's fine.
yeah. Some things wouldn't change, I suppose. Um, However, another larger thing that would, I think, make a huge difference is how do you account for different species? Surely you can't have just species fighting only their own species. That feels a little bit restrictive, you know? Um, so there are species, you could do species class, you could do like a class of like similar species to each other, but then that would compartmentalize things into so many different divisions. So then you think like maybe you do a size class or a weight, like in lieu of a weight class,
See
um,
that? Yeah.
like where you have species of a similar, I mean maybe similar species, but also similar-ish height or similar-ish weight. You know, you can pit them against each other, and that might make it more fair. And it would I don't think it would act too different than weight classes in the end. Granted, you would have to account for weight allowances in those, and maybe like in some of the really large ones, like in some of like like think like the lightweights or the welterweights of these size classes. Stuff in the middle. Um, those would probably have a really large pool of athletes. And so you could probably split that into smaller weight classes, but you don't want to, or size classes, or species classes, or what have you. Um, but it becomes a lot harder for it to not end up like boxing or something like that with all of its bajillion weight classes of separated by a couple pounds. It becomes hard to avoid something like that. I think. But it's interesting to think about. I think there's a lot of nuance to it. Of course, obviously, both of us have characters that do martial arts. Obviously, your character does jujitsu. My character does. My character. I have a character that does kickboxing. You know, like there's a lot, and you know these are characters that are very very different. My you know the character who my character who kickboxes is a red panda, so she's all of 4'3". That puts her in a very small size class, you know. Um, Whereas your Sona's more more canine and probably can fight in um, a little more average size
Technically speaking,
size
he fights
class.
in welterweight, so
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, but then welterweight, it becomes so hard to define,
right, exactly.
with species and size class as well on top of weight class. Um, that makes it kind of difficult to really diagnose that. So I don't know. It's one of those things I like to toss around in my mind. I think obviously, I also think that commissions rules across like states or across countries or whatever may also be prone to a lot of differences, just based on I think what species are prevalent in that region and what natural abilities they have. You know, um, I think there would also really just in bringing it out from martial arts. I think there would be a lot more different martial arts. Um, Based on different species, strengths and attributes. Like I think of like how in the we have Lethway, we have Sambo, we have
I would love
Jujitsu,
to see more Deathway fights.
right? Like we already have so many different martial arts already going on in our world. Now imagine if every place in the world not only had different techniques, they also had different body types, different sizes, different attributes to work with. I think that would lead to some really interesting things and lead to a lot of really diverse MMA bases, based on whatever the species of your fighter is, where they come from. I think
Or
there's a lot of
hear me
depth.
out. Counterpoint. Every fight's catch weight. Good luck, little homie.
Pride rules.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be brutal.
Okay, can we agree Pride FC would be a Lion promotion
Oh
in the
yeah, for
furry
sure.
world?
Oh yeah,
Perfect.
for sure.
Yeah.
Just give me the soccer kicks
Yep.
and the
Then we then
stops.
then we can make the shaved ape jokes come true. Um, just have an actual literal shaved ape come in and fight the lions.
Dude, imagine getting soccer kicked by like a 6 foot wolf. A
No,
6 foot wolf.
imagine getting spinning like like a spinning rear kick. Like imagine like that kick from Edson Barboza on Dan Hooker. Imagine
Oh.
that done by a horse.
Yeah, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. Like it
You're
becomes
dead.
like so. I think that's another thing. Actually, really, the rule sets would have to be so tightly managed to avoid like permanent harm. I think. Um, Not to mention, there's the issue of claws. What do you do with those? I think you'd have to
I
design
like to
gloves to
I
cover
like
those.
to believe, and I choose to believe that you use you're laying in bed at like 3 in the morning, just eyes wide open, just like, how's this gonna work? It
See,
surely there's a way it has to work, but how?
this is the kind of thing I think about. I love this kind of thing. This is the kind of world
Just
building I
like
do in my
staring
spare
at
time
shit,
because I'm a
it's like,
nerd.
but they have hooves. Like how do they do a heel hook on them? Like it doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
right. Exactly. Like you'd have to make up a new submission.
And
Like
can you
for
put
example,
gloves
horse.
around paws? Like how do you do that?
You'd have to design new gloves. I mean, you can't put a heel hook on a horse, but however, horse ankles are very fragile, so any sort of leg submission
You
would
could put
be
a
terrifying to them
nasty knee
because
bar.
yeah, like
A
there's
Rizma
endless
has knee bar on him.
yeah, exactly. There are endless possibilities. And like I don't know. This is the kind of thing I love. I'm a giant nerd. I think about this kind of, and I'm also furry trash. So this is the
This
kind of thing I
thing
think
that
about.
keeps you up at night.
Exactly. No, like I would look like if you were to write a short story about a character who does MMA for these are the kind of things you'd have to think about, or at least that I would have to think about because I'm a tryhard. Most people would probably just write a pretty standard, um, a pretty standard story with just some features changed for anthro, to include anthros. But if you change enough, it does start to affect the base details, and you have to start changing those to make them make sense. That's why I find this kind of thing so interesting.
Before
There's
we
so
move
much world
on,
building to do. Yes.
I do want to say that Bryce Mitchell paved the way for this by apparently throwing a deer into a rear naked choke.
Yeah, Luke Rockhold choked out a calf
He
at a
choked
rodeo
out
once.
he choked out a cat.
Yeah, like he choked a no, it wasn't a bull. Yeah, it was
It
it
was
was
like
it
a
was a it was a
rodeo
calf.
or something like
It
that,
was
and
a calf. Yeah,
he immediately pulls guard and tries to throw a choke on it,
yeah. On
which
a Which is just so funny.
brings us
We'll
to
get
our
back to
next
Rockhold.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, brings us to our next topic. Is actually the before we kind of wrap this up a bit is we do have 278 coming up.
Yes,
I
lots to
will
say about this card.
I need to bring up the card real quick because I am a horrible host and am not prepared.
Well, obviously, we have Usman Edwards. We can start with that.
All right, so we got start from the top. We got Usman Edwards for champion. We have, and this is the fight that I really just kind of want to talk about a lot because I find it hilarious. Is Paulo Costa versus Luke Rockhold. I think we were actually going to see a murder on live television.
I mean, it's gonna be wild, and I don't think I disagree. But we'll get through the rest of the main card, and then we'll start
We
commentating.
got Jose Aldo and Marab. I'm gonna let you take the round on this name.
Svalashvili.
Yep, that's exactly what I was gonna
Yep.
say.
Then we had
That's word for
Marcin
word.
Tybura
Oh, it's
and Alex
Marcin.
Romanov.
Okay.
Yep, Polish man. And then we have the returning Tyson Pedro against Terry Hunsucker, who is on a pay-per-view card for the UFC.
Fun fact about
Um,
Tyson Pedro: he is tied to Avasa's brother-in-law.
Fun fact about Harry Hunsucker: Tai Tuivasa knocked his ass out.
So it's gonna run the family. Awesome.
Yep. So we'll get to that, but let's obviously start with Usman Edwards. That's the big fight. I think this is going to be. I think it'll be an interesting fight. I gotta be real though. I've only seen Edwards fight twice, and one of them was the horrific fight against Bilal Muhammad, where he almost took his eye out. Not really, but
That's the
he hooked
reason
his.
why Bilal wears sunglasses all the time.
Yeah, no, he Leon Edwards permanently damaged his eye, um,
Yikers.
and it's noticeably uneven now. Like it's noticeably different looking than his other eye now. God, that fight was so hard to watch. It was really unfortunate.
I think
Um,
honestly the only Edwards fight I really paid attention to was the Diaz fight,
yep, that was the other one I
which
saw.
it was it's exactly how you think how you think it would go.
Up until the last minute.
Yeah, and man,
I
Diaz.
mean, yeah, I mean, we got really really high odds on Usman. He's minus 370 to win this fight,
What's Edwards' odds?
plus 290.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
way more
yeah.
lopsided than I thought. Granted, Usman is a killer. Not to, he's incredible, and he's rounded out his game so much since starting training with Trevor Whitman. Who is Trevor Whitman the best coach in the game? I think
Um,
he's definitely up there.
he's a great coach. Recently, he's made some interesting calls. Case in point, the Rose Namajunas fight.
Well, that one I feel like it's unfair to put against him because he gave all the right advice. She just ignored him in favor of Pat Barry.
That's fair.
Who's an idiot and also a pedophile. But
Womp.
I won't get into that. But yeah, I mean, Usman has really stepped up his level, and he's number one pound for pound in the rankings, and for a reason. I think Edwards will give him a good fight, but
I
without having
just
seen enough of his fights, and having seen the first fight where because this is a rematch. This is Usman versus Edwards too, where Usman wrestled him to death. Basically, I I could see a similar thing happen. Usman doesn't wrestle as much these days,
well,
but he
he's
can
his
also strike
knees.
way better.
Usman's knees are dust.
True,
They're absolutely gone.
yeah, but
So
he's
that's going to
learned to
be.
strike instead.
It's a bit. I wonder if. And I know Edwards isn't really. He's not a wrestler, is he? I don't know that much about him.
I know he was a striker, and he's gotten better wrestling defense, uh, and takedown defense since, which his defense is quite good
There's
on that. But
I
he's
just
mostly a
wonder if
striker.
I know they're smart enough to not want to take this fight to the ground. But I wonder if they see a hole in the game in terms of like Kamara's knees, because again, they're like I said, they're shot.
True.
And he's even said it on multiple times, like his knees are pretty bad.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, he's not been a wrestle heavy guy for a few fights now. Ever since the Masvidal fight, I don't, which was a while ago now. So I don't know. That could be a thing. So if they're on the feet, could Edwards be a better striker? He might be, and he's got a height advantage, but not a reach advantage, which is a little weird.
Technically, I think he's a better striker, but Kamara holds a lot of power in his fists.
He does. He did starch Masvidal, and nobody starches Masvidal. Literally,
He
he's the only one
also
who's ever put out Masvidal.
he also
So,
like shattered Colby's jaw apparently.
yep, that is
Which
true.
I mean, say what you want. If it's easy, is it hard? I couldn't tell you, but I mean, hey, breaking anyone's jaw is pretty.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know picks. I'm
Um,
gonna go Usman. I mean, I think Usman pulls it out. I'm gonna say round 4, by TKO.
I can see that. Yeah.
Probably by ground and pound.
I depending depending on how I think the fight's gonna go, it could even just be early round 5 if Leon puts up enough of a firefight.
Hmm.
But I don't see Leon walking away with a belt unless something like major happens.
And it could. MMA is a crazy sport.
It's
So
crazier things have happened before.
look, I mean, look, if Juliana Pena could beat Amanda Nunes, anything is possible. That's my opinion. That fight was insane. So from there we move on to Costa versus Rockhold. Let's talk about this fight. Basically,
Costa.
two buff models gonna fight each other. Basically,
I shared a tweet. I don't know if did I send it to you. Um, I
I
gotta
think
find
you
it now.
did. I think you
It
did.
was
This is the one about the.
Rocco versus Costa feels like a fight between two meathead jocks of high school meeting after school to fight over the nerd who does their math homework. Yeah,
Yeah, you sent me that.
yeah,
Oh boy.
that tweet brought to you by McMallet MMA. Freaking hilarious dude on Twitter. Love that guy. Um, I don't see again. I don't see any way Rockhold comes out of this alive or not. At the very least, like brutally maimed. As
Yeah, I
much of a
mean,
meme as Paulo Costa is, he has power. He has lots of power.
like, let's be real here, especially because with how much Costa rehydrates, Costa fights at like 220,
Oh yeah,
if I
easily.
remember right. At in a middleweight fight. Luke Rockhold is not getting him to the ground, and that is his only avenue to victory here. Is that safe to say?
Yeah,
Um, I think this could go real bad for Rockhold. There's a reason Pablo Costa is minus 330. So yeah, Costa by beheading at some point. Um,
I
I'm gonna say he throws a really killer knee.
I don't
Um,
ever really want to see someone get brutally maimed on live television. But I can't think of anyone better to happen than Luke Rockhold, just given his history and how much he's been kind
well,
of an idiot.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than him, there are
Um,
very Tony Kelly. That's a good one.
I I wonder if Bisping's gonna commentate on this fight.
Whoa, that would be fun.
I would
He
love to see
might.
Bisping
I mean,
commentate on a Luke
Dom just
Rockhold
broke his
fight.
nose. Dom just broke his nose.
Um,
Oh no, you know what? It's a pay per view. It's definitely gonna be Rogan DC and Anik.
oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
That's
Well,
fair.
we'll see though. So Aldo versus Marab. That I think is going to be a better fight than people give it credit for. I just noticed
It's gonna be very close.
Marab is the favorite. He's minus 125 over Aldo, which, ooh, I don't bet, but That seems a little disrespectful to Aldo. Because it's not like Aldo has good takedown defense. However, Marab's volume wrestling, if that's a thing, volume wrestling is absurd. Like he is
Rob
a
is
takedown
he's
machine.
also a big bantamweight too, isn't he?
I think I no, well, maybe he did say he was going to cut the flyweight if he was ever in title challenging position because Aljo's his boy and doesn't
No,
want to
I
lose
mean,
him.
but just like stature wise, like
Let's see.
he's pretty big, and compared to like
He's shorter than Aldo.
I guess. Hmm,
But then again, Aldo is a big bantamweight because he came down from featherweight.
yeah,
So maybe. So yeah, no, like I think this will be interesting. Aldo's definitely the better striker. Marab can wrestle for sure, but I think his takedown defense is quite good. Um, but Marab averages 7.3 takedowns. He averages 7.3 takedowns.
it's
That is absurd.
that is
That is
insane.
that's why I say volume wrestling because like how else do you describe that? That's insane.
Don't you just
So,
hate when someone just spams the takedown button every time you fight them?
yeah. Although sometimes it's awesome. Like one of the fights I've gone back and watched was um, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Abel Trujillo. Khabib with his 27 takedowns in 3 rounds, which is
That's about
absurd.
right.
Yeah. And credit to Trujillo for getting up after each one because he also had a great wrestling background, which is why he was able to get up so many times. But that record's never getting broken ever.
Real quick, so just kind of finished up a bit.
Yeah. Marcin
Marcin, who do you got?
Romanov.
Romanov?
Tabora's not bad, but Romanov's like he's 16-0. He's got the hype train.
Oh God,
I
yeah, I just look at this.
Yeah. I waxed poetic about him last week already. I think he continues his rise. Pedro is going to absolutely murder Harry Hunsucker live on TV. Like I said, like Harry Hunsucker
I
is
will
one of
be
the
there
worst
for
fighters.
it.
Yeah, he is one of the worst fighters in the UFC. He was brought in as a short notice guy. No disrespect to the guy, but he's going to get pasted. And then a couple names to watch further down the card. I think if I had to pick one prelim fight that might stand out, um, it would be Sean Woodson versus Luis Saldana. Sean Woodson's a really underrated prospect. He's just so large for his division. He's a 6'2" featherweight with a 78-inch
Jesus
reach.
Christ.
Dude is a nightmare creature. So he's a good prospect. He's also from St. Louis, so he's my boy. I have a lot of roots in St. Louis. So a couple other names to watch. Lucia Pudilova. Apparently, she was quite good before she was inexplicably cut, and she's just been brought back. This is her debut back. Wu Yanan's like a good fighter for her to demonstrate whether she's worth the hype on. Miranda Maverick is one of the best prospects at women's flyweight. She's quite good. I think she's going to climb the rankings a lot. She's been passed by Erin Blanchfield, who absolutely destroyed her. They just announced Molly McCann versus Erin Blanchfield.
Oh yeah, that's like a
McCann's
couple of
going
days
to
ago.
get absolutely murked. But
Oh,
I'm all in on Blanchfield. She's
hype
very
hype train's got to stop somewhere.
Yep. I think they're trying to transfer the heat off of McCann to Blanchfield. And
All
then
in
the
all, it's looking
last,
like a really good card though.
yeah, no, I mean, like, there's not a lot of name value on the early prelims, but there's a lot of fighters who could be fun. Like, I think my potential, I scrolled further down. I'm changing my prelim banger prediction. I saw Amir Albazi versus Francisco Figueiredo. Albazi was very good in the one fight of his I saw. He's had two, and he's undefeated in the UFC. Um, I think that's going to be a good fight. And then AJ Fletcher had a really good flying knee on Contender Series. Um, so I'd like to see what he can do. Auri Chilung, he's one of those guys. He just comes to scrap, and he has a funny hat. So I think that fight could be your low level banger off the prelims. Um, and it's a good. The main card is quite good. And the prelims, they definitely have more than enough to catch the attention. I think this should be a decent card. We'll see if it delivers. I'm trying to not. I'm not going to hype it too much because every time I hype a card too much, it ends up disappointing. Looking at
That's
you, UFC London.
that's the curse for you.
Exactly. So yeah, no, but
Yeah.
we've got a good card coming up, and we'll have plenty to discuss next week.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, I think that'll wrap us up for now. Thanks for coming and listening with us.
Yeah, yeah, really great episode, and like I said, we're definitely gonna recap 278 as soon as or probably the Monday after. Try and do like a weekly thing, and depending on how creative I'm feeling tonight, either I get this episode up tonight, or I'm gonna try and do it tomorrow. Just depending on how tired I am from work. But yeah, so this
Mhm.
has been another episode of Dogfight. Please give us a follow on Twitter at Dogfight Pod, and um, I'll also have our YouTube channel. We have the link in the description or in the bio for the Twitter page. Also, where hopefully this is where you're listening. If not, this is about it's awkward because I don't have this anywhere else.
Yep.
Yeah,
How
please
did
give
you
us
how did you get this?
yes, how to listen to this, but please give us a
You hack
follow
our
on Twitter.
computers.
And we also have like my personal social at Uriah Stone on Twitter. Pavel, if you want to
And-
plug yours.
Yep, and you can find me at SethNY. That is my personal Twitter.
And,
The handle may change at some point, but that's where it's at right now.
and I'll throw the socials in the comment or the description for the YouTube video. And please give us criticisms, what you guys want to hear, what you don't want to hear. If you just don't want to hear me talk about old Pride fights, or if you want to hear me talk about old Pride fights, I will, because I love Pride FC. It's another episode for another time.
Yep.
But I guess
All feedback is welcome. We're still
for
working
sure.
on things as well. So yeah.
But like I said, please give us again any criticism. We're kind of doing this haphazardly, just trying to get some content out there for you guys.